All right, welcome to the Two Sons Podcast. Happy Saturday, everybody. Hope all of you guys had a great week. It would mean a lot to us if you would scroll down and hit that subscribe button. We appreciate all of you guys who've been supporting the show, commenting, all that kind of stuff. We have a jam-packed show today. We're going to be talking about Dave Filoni getting promoted. New George is the phrase you just used. I love it. Yeah. It should just say that on his business card. Just
other George. Yeah. Ask me when George isn't around. And George isn't around, so I'm in charge.
Yeah, exactly. And then I have a take about the High Republic. It's not even so much a take. It's just like the initial kind of like sentiment that's forming around a take that I want to kind of dive into, because I just I haven't quite enjoyed reading this book as much as I have some of the other Star Wars content that I have recently. So I want to break that down a little bit.
I like when you and I disagree, because I've enjoyed it. Yeah,
exactly. And I'm kind of hoping that you can kind of talk me off the ledge a little bit. And I did just get to a part of the book where there was something kind of interesting, which we'll talk about in a minute. Okay. But I haven't seen you in a while. It's been like a week. So how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. It was kind of funny because yesterday before you texted me, I was like, I need to touch base with Jay, just because I was shocked that you and I hadn't seen each other. Because I mean, some of our viewers might know, like, dude, we see each other probably 3 times a week.
Yeah, like between the pod, and then we usually hang out with our wives, and then we usually hang out with our friends.
Exactly. So like, and then like throw in some trips in the mix, and like some ski trips, which, dude, I'm getting stoked for.
Oh, dude, it's happening.
I'm good. Happening. Jay sent us in our group text this video of him just bulleting down at an irresponsible rate on skis, and just like snowboarder like flies by him, and then he like passes a skier, and then he's just like going back and forth. I'm just like, Jay, like, because there's like that I think they call it like the GoPro phenomenon, where like you're doing something badass, but then you check out your GoPro and you're like, oh, this looks pretty shitty. But like the GoPro phenomenon was not happening with you, dude. You were going probably close to 40, I'm thinking.
Dude, I have no idea.
You're going fast.
But I have not gone that fast since then. You know, It's funny because, like, dude, so Luke and I are both super competitive, and he's a much better skier than me on powder, and then I'm a much better skier than him on groomed runs.
Dude,
right?
You zip.
So we go. I shouldn't say much better. We're both slightly
better.
You're
much better.
So we go to. I go on. So we have like these traditions, right? And like skiing's a big tradition in our friend group and in our family. So our friend group, we go to Breckenridge every single year. And we get like a ski in, ski out. We just invest. It's like a whole thing. We throw down, and we make a nice trip out of it. And then my wife's family, who kind of introduced me to skiing, we do a big family ski trip every single year, and we go to a different place every single year. And last year we went to North Star, which is by Lake Tahoe, and they have all these like groomed blacks down the backside of the mountain. And so like, imagine like the vast majority of ski resorts you go to, like a green will be like a level kind of like slight decline that's groomed, right? And then a blue will be like a pretty steep decline that's groomed. And then like usually the blacks are like moguls. Yeah. And they're usually ungroomed. And so when you have a real like a groomed black, it's like a real opportunity to work on your speed. And like
open things
they
up.
Had like 2 or 3 of these like wide runs, groomed blacks, and like, and literally, dude, I was cooking on that trip.
Yes,
you know what's crazy? Like every other ski trip that year was powder skiing, and it kicked my ass. Now, I will say by the end, because you and I had a powder day when we took a day trip to Snowbowl
that was
the
fun.
End of the year, and I started to kind of get a little bit better at it. But like powder skiing is like an entirely different beast.
It truly is. It truly is, and it feels like you can't get hurt powder skiing, but you totally can. Like I remember I went down that little jot, I'll call it, and I just started going backwards somehow.
Dude.
And I was just
you
like
took
rolling.
me down that route too, and I got separated from you at one point. I lost my skis. I ran into a tree. Like it was an abject disaster, dude.
Dude, it really was. And as I'm like rolling backwards, like tumbling, skis are flying off. I'm like, I hope there's not a tree behind me somewhere, because I'm literally gonna
go back.
Like smash my head into it. Skiing is so incredibly dangerous.
Do you remember the Breckenridge trip when you caught your? It was one of us caught our glove. Dude. Was it you or me? I don't remember.
It was my glove.
Okay,
dude. Yeah. We're going through the trees, and we're like, okay, like
you almost ripped your
trees.
Hand off.
Yeah, skiing through the trees is super dangerous. Let's be careful. Literally, right after that conversation, I'm going through, and I get so close to this it's actually a big tree, and it had a little branch sticking out of it, aka a knife sticking out. and I'm going through, and somehow my glove just gets hooked onto the tree branch, and I'm skiing without a glove. Then, and I look back, and then Jason's like holding my glove,
dude.
Which was like right, like the way it came off was like right next to like major arteries. In my wrist.
Dude,
like,
it could have been
not
so
that
bad.
like I even got cut, but dude, it's just like skiing is so dangerous,
dude. Because Luke's one of those dudes that like wants to go into the trees, and
I don't
I'm
know
not
why.
like that. Like I just want to stay out in the open,
But I like to go
and then
slow through the
I like
trees.
moguls. Moguls are fun,
Yeah.
but like, and I'll do an occasional tree run with Luke, but like. I'll see him. I'll be skiing. I'll look over on the side, and he's just like in the thick of it. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? And then, degloving is supposed to be you just lose like the finger on a ring. You would have degloved your whole hand. You would have just ripped all the skin off.
Dude, gross, so gross. But yeah, this year and every year, I'm like, I'm gonna take it slow this year. I'm just gonna be relaxed. I'm just gonna play it cool. And then Elena has that conversation with me too. Hey, dude, don't get hurt. It's like, yeah, that's you're right. Like I don't want to get hurt, and that's why I don't have that app that you guys ski with, like where it tells you how fast you went.
Yeah.
I literally don't have that because I don't want to try and beat myself. Like,
yeah. So that app, the Kathy family, my wife's family, is like obsessed with using that app. And when you go skiing with that family, it's balls to the walls from the minute the lift opens to the minute the lift closes at 4, and it's super competitive, and everybody in that family's good. Like that, you wonder how I got decent at skiing. I had no choice.
Dude, I know.
but to
Sink
figure
or
it out,
swim.
figure it out, or get left behind in the dust. And like specifically, that app was stressing me out. And this is gonna sound like
the app that we were referring to, sorry, really quick, it just tracks your
Slopes,
skiing.
right?
I think it's called Slopes. Yeah. It tracks your skiing, so it tells you like top speed, and it also tells you how many vertical feet you've skied.
Yeah, like and it'll like have a chart of all your runs that day, so you can like see how many runs you did. It's a cool app, and like I still use it. I just don't race with it because it's funny. Because so in that video I sent you, I was going a little over 50 miles an hour. And
Hey, that's so crazy, dude.
I have never crossed 50 since that day, and it's not because I am incapable of it. It's because like that was a trip where like I was kind of figuring out how to ski, and then I got there, and then I was like, actually, I don't really want to go that fast, and I like toned it down, and like I am comfortably like. I like to cruise in the low 40s. I have full control of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm moving fast and having fun, but I never feel like I'm going to get myself hurt. Like I feel that to me is like my comfort zone. And that to me is like where I like it. And I have to get on Carly because like the other thing too is like, well, we drink on the mountains. Okay?
Of course.
like you're not supposed to, but like, we drink on the mountains. So like it can get to the point too where I'm like, hey, like Carly, like it's 3 p.m. and we've had a few, like maybe not 55 miles an hour.
Seriously
on that
though,
run, you know what I mean?
She cooks, man.
Dude,
your
she's
wife can
so
snowboard.
good. She's insane, man. She's straight up better than me.
Oh, she's incredible. Like she's super incredible, dude. It's so funny your different ski styles though, because you are so not the personality to be like, I want to go fast. Like that's just not you. Like you're not the guy that's like, hey, let's go ATVing. You're not really a risk taker. So it literally cracks me up that you're just like, you can just plummet down the mountain like that. Whereas my ski style is like way more relaxed probably, and I definitely like to go through like the trees and like be a little bit more technical, whereas you just like open it up.
Last year you started to open it up a little bit,
just a bit.
Like, yeah, but again, like you find like your own little personal speed that you enjoy, and you kind of you kind of relax from there. But
dude,
like
for what it's worth, like drinking thing, like it's pretty well documented that people who are drunk like don't get injured as much.
Really?
Oh yeah. So there's a threshold. There's a threshold. Okay, so time out. Yeah.
So
there's a threshold.
Slobber, shit faced drunk is not a good skiing condition. Is that
so no. So like if you were so slobber shit faced drunk, is that what you just said?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Slobber,
I've never.
slobber S. Yeah. What would be the acronym for that? Slobber
shit SSF.
SFD.
SSFD.
SSFD. If you like crash into a tree at 40 miles an hour, like obviously like there's only so much survival you can have in that situation. But if you're to go like 40 and then just start to like roll down a hill, and if you're trashed, just piss drunk, you'll probably be less likely to get injured than you would if you
because you won't brace yourself. So
no,
you'll
you'll literally be loosey goosey. Yeah. There's a document.
That is crazy.
I don't know if this is true or not. Do not quote me.
Call me skeptical, by the way.
No, dude, it happens.
I need you to send me the article.
So here's this is a little bit more morbid. Drunk drivers oftentimes survive crashes where they kill people.
Oh yeah.
So that's pretty morbid, and like so like that's
Thanks for
kind of
taking the
phenomenon.
show in a really negative direction there, Loki.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. No, but that's super interesting.
It's true.
That's super interesting.
There's a I don't know how well documented. I don't know if this is real or not, but I've heard reports, stories of someone literally getting like moved by a tornado. I don't know how far, and they didn't die, and they got pissed drunk. Maybe they thought they were in a tornado. I don't know. Like that seems like a wives' tale.
I was in a tornado.
That seems like a wives' tale, but like I've heard this story enough where I'm just like, I don't know. Is that real? I was like,
we found you passed out on the street corner by the strip club. What happened? A tornado.
A tornado. I was on my back porch. I swear I was not at Jaguar strip club.
Dude, speaking of morbid, I have no idea how this actually happened. But so YouTube recommendations, right? Yeah. Which, by the way, is like one of the greatest reasons why I keep telling everybody like go to YouTube, go to YouTube, go to YouTube, because when you put content on YouTube, you empower yourself to get exposed to a wide audience for free. It literally is that simple.
That's a pretty cool
system.
Like
YouTube's algorithm. Excuse me. YouTube's algorithm has worked wonders for this show as we've done our, obviously the shows that we do in between shows that come out, like the Ahsoka and stuff, they're more for our more loyal listeners and all of you guys who have listened. Like we've averaged over 250 people watching per week since Ahsoka, which again, when you're building a podcast from scratch, like that's not nothing.
It feels good, especially in like this is like our off season, right? Yeah, like no new Star Wars stuff is really coming out except for some of the books, which there's a way less following for the books. Yes, anyways,
exactly. But like during this time, it can be like this is more for our more loyal listeners. But when you're doing the bigger content, like you can get significant chunks of people that have never seen your stuff to see it on YouTube. So anyway, so one day I log on and just to open up YouTube, and I think I was going to my page just to check some numbers. I usually check the numbers in the morning when I wake up, and because just like any other crazy person, I'm like obsessed with the performance of the show. And so literally I will get on, and the first video that recommended one day was like this. It was like Boeing 737, inverts after takeoff, and it's like real cabin audio or something. It's from it's from this thing called the Flight Channel, okay? And so of course, like I'm just like I'm gonna click on it, right? So I click on it, and it's this channel where they take every aviation accident in human history, and they chronicle every single specific detail about what led to the accident. Wow. So like I'll give you an example. There's one. So to make a long story short, now I'm addicted to him. And now like every single time I open up my phone to check the numbers, I'm like, I gotta watch this one. And it's like because like all of them are different. It's like midair collision over Ukraine or something like that. It's like it'll be like some crazy shit like that. And I'm not talking about I think there were the specific collision I'm talking about was like somewhere around the Russia area like decades ago, and it was like a complete accident because a air traffic controller was asleep or something. But anyway, there was one in particular. It was the China Airlines 747 that was landing in this like super sketchy airport, I think in Taiwan. And because it was like a runway that stretched into the ocean, and then there were a bunch of buildings next to it, so they had to kind of zoom in and fly like that, because if they overshot the runway, they'd run into buildings. Okay. And so this dude did this descent, and he kind of scratched the tail of the plane as he came in a little too steep.
On a building?
No, on the runway.
Oh, okay.
Because you have to like literally swoop in to land. Yeah. It's like one of the more dangerous airports in the world at the time, and so it scratched the shit out of the bottom of the airplane. And so they park, right? And as you guys know, like when you go up into cruising altitude, especially in those big airplanes, those like 747s and stuff, you're up at like 40,000 feet, and like literally the air pressure dynamic is crazy, and the external temperatures are crazy, right? So like the cabin has to be like structurally sound. So they installed like what they call a doubler plate on it. But Boeing had like a specific manual for how to do it, and they kind of freeballed it and like did like a different kind of patch.
You never freeball air travel ever,
right? But this was in the 70s, right? So
they're freeballing everything in the 70s.
So the airplane operates totally normal for 22 years after that.
Stop.
22 years. But what had happened is when they kind of like did the shitty patch, some cracks from the original scratch were like barely stretching out from the thing, and metal fatigue started to happen there every single time the cabin would pressurize.
I'm shocked that plane made it 22 years before something bad happened, and that wasn't changed out just for maintenance sake.
I know, right? They were about to sell it off too, so they had just sold it to this other airline company with 2 flights left. They were gonna do a quick there and back trip to Hong Kong, I think, or I'm not even sure. But anyway, they were gonna make this like quick back and forth trip, and then they were gonna give the plane deliver to this other company and they sold it for $1.4 million. And I'm like, okay, like so they
pretty good deal.
Off-pedaled it. As soon as it got up into cruising to a significant altitude, explosive decompression, the plane literally blew up.
So one of what's crazy to think about though, like if you think about that airplane's like lifespan, right? Let's say, visually speaking, it's a chart from this wall to this wall. Mm-hmm. Like it's amazing to think that it made it so far. And that it was just the difference of like 1 or 2 trips at the very, very end. Like those pilots, because like it's usually different pilots, are literally just like essentially, for lack of a better term, like handing off the key. Like,
oh, dude,
hey, dude,
it's crazy.
Next one, you.
Literally, yeah. And then, multiple times a day.
Yeah, multiple times a day. And then it just goes off. And then can you imagine being the pilot that flew it last that didn't die?
Dude.
And just knowing that you were like literally minutes away from death.
Oh, dude.
Over a 22-year span. Like, hey, this plane, you can fly it as much as you want over 22 years, but one of them is going to be the one. That's crazy to think about.
It's completely crazy, and like so the concept of metal fatigue is fascinating to me too. So like when Carly and I first moved back to Tucson from Charlotte, I was looking for a job. And I was interviewing with some real estate people, and then I ended up taking a real estate job, but I also interviewed with this engineering company. And my job was like engineering sales. And so they wanted people like me with like some engineering background, because I had a pre-engineering degree at Utah State, and which is an associate's. And like literally they were like, hey, like you can probably understand some of this stuff and sell it to other engineers.
I see.
Yeah. And so they were like, we're going to educate you on metal fatigue and like this specific software that we have that you can sell to these companies that essentially allows them to identify the exact moment that their metal is going to fail.
Wow.
Which was like because then what they can do is like say that moment is, 10,000 uses. They can rate it for 5,000 uses and leave like a good healthy slush. You know what I mean? But it's a super fascinating concept, because like metal, we think of metal as this super resilient material, and it is, but like literally, like if you took this piece right here, and if it was strong enough to withstand you standing on it, you could stand on it once, you could stand on it twice, but eventually it would take your weight, and the metal would just give. And it's kind of like a crazy concept.
No, it is. It's so funny. Our brains, dude, are so active all the time. You and I cannot turn off our brains, and I actually enjoy the hell out of it. Like I think it's so much fun. Last night it was the Pac-12 championship for football, right? Oregon versus Washington. I'm sure Washington won. I stopped watching the game. Anyways, they were in the Raiders stadium.
I think Oregon won.
No way.
Oh, look, let me double check.
Oh yeah, because they came back. They were getting like blown out in the beginning.
Keep going, I'll tell you.
Anyway, so they showed the booth.
Washington
and then they showed the booth, and underneath the booth they had like a net set up, so if anybody fell out of the booth, they would get caught. And I remember like looking at the net and being like,
the Top Golf net?
Essentially, no. It literally looks like a Top Golf net, but like envision the broadcasting booth, and that's open, and then they have like the field below it. Like if you fell, you'd get injured. And then they had these like little nets. Yeah, the Top Golf net.
Yeah,
I know exactly what you're
net.
talking about.
Yeah.
So anybody who's drunk and like
the drunk
too
swing
hard,
out of my shoes. Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, that net was like the flimsiest looking net I've ever seen in my life. And the whole entire time I was thinking about ratings. It's so funny that you bring up ratings.
Like how long it could be able to handle, especially if it received direct sunlight at any point during the day. Because like direct sunlight, we think of it as like, oh, the sun like dries it out. No, it's literally ultraviolet rays that essentially degrade the material.
Yeah. And then I was like, that's rated for like 250 probably. If like a really big person was to fall in the net, they would die, I think. And like that's where my brain goes as I'm watching this game. And I don't say anything. I'm just like in these thoughts, my own thoughts. Also, by the way, did you see how ugly the field looked during that Pac-12 championship?
I didn't watch the game.
If you see any highlights last night, it was like like the cheap green carpet that you can buy. It was legitimately like that. It had waves in it. where it wasn't stretched properly for the Pac-12 championship.
That seems like
dude.
really unsafe.
Yes, they had literally waves in it. And I was like waiting for the broadcasters to start talking about it because it looked terrible. It looked so bad.
That's obnoxious.
Prescott Valley had an arena football team one time.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's dope.
It was
Valley.
in Prescott Valley,
yeah.
baby. So and they had a terrible field too.
His parents used to live up there, by the way.
And so they had this ice rink, and they're called the Sun Dogs, and they were like the lower team for the Colorado Avalanche. And then in the off seasons, they'd play arena football, and it was like this big rollout. We're stoked on arena football, dude. They put out the field, and everyone walks in, and then everyone realizes that they completely botched the field because they made the end zones like 10 feet shorter than what they should have been.
Oh, no.
So they literally added grass at the end, and then spray painted it.
Grass?
No.
Oh,
Turf. Yeah.
Dude,
it's such a mess. It made me think of that.
That's
Yeah.
so janky.
It's so janky. It looks so bad. But it looked really bad.
But yeah, so I'm going through this phase where I'm watching all these things now, and I can't help it. Like yesterday, I saw one where pilots were joking about crashing right before they crashed on takeoff.
Oh my gosh.
I've seen disputes. I've seen pilots in the comments being like, "That's not what happened." Like it's actually like really. Hey, here's the thing. It's profoundly so okay. I'm interested in it because what specifically I'm fascinated with is like this concept. I get in arguments with these old head basketball fans. All you Hoops Tonight listeners out there will understand my sentiment here. Like these old ass people that are like the NBA was better back in the day, and it's like well, back in the '90s they were better at the fundamentally
hook shots.
Or like ball movement was better. And I want to be like no, like literally look at the centers in the NBA now. You watch Chet Holmgren's hitting like Kobe Bryant fadeaways over his left shoulder. It's like it's just not even. To me, like every industry is in a relentless pursuit of perfection, and to me, aviation is such a great example of that because like. I'll give you an example. So, like, have you heard the numbers? Like, I remember when Trump was in office, he used to always promote this, but he'd be like, oh, we had 15 million flights this year with 0 fatalities or something like that. You know what I mean? And like, aviation is safer now than it's ever been, right? And like, it's what it took to get to that point is so important because, like, literally, like, I'll give you an example. There was this plane that crash landed on its arrival into London, if I remember correctly, because it ran out of fuel. And nobody died. The pilots did an amazing job kind of saving the situation. But what happened is they took off and they went to extreme high altitude north of Moscow, like 40,000 feet. And they were checking their fuel gauges and like checking fuel temperature to make sure their fuel wouldn't freeze. And what they have to do is, and I had no idea about this, but like apparently the atmosphere gets like random cold bursts as well. So they constantly have to monitor the external temperature out there. Because even though in the cabin they can keep it warm, like outside, and if it freezes the fuel, the plane crashes. So like,
I'll pass on frozen fuel. Today.
Exactly. So what ends up happening is like they're checking the thing and they're like, oh, the fuel's fine. And then on their descent into London, what ended up happening is bits of water that were in the fuel froze and turned into ice cubes and clogged the fuel lines and shut the engines down. And then literally, they like basically barely glided the airplane in, and it ended up landing short and kind of like skidding off the runway. The landing gear collapsed. It was a whole thing.
Dude, again, an entire flight, and they're like, "Oh, we were 50 feet short."
Yeah, dude, like
what?
that close. Yeah, it's crazy. And I know, dude, near misses, man. I'm telling you. And
there
are a lot of ugly ones too, where like it goes south. Like
of course,
the one in Chicago where the left engine falls off the plane because when they swapped it out, they didn't do it right. And the left engine fall and the thing like to the side. It was the most deadly accident in aviation history. It was over
I hope someone's
people
not
died.
listening to our podcast right now about to board an airplane.
No, but okay. So this is the point I'm trying to make though. They made adjustments to the way their system works, so that ice can't clog fuel lines anymore.
Right.
And that's my point. Is like, and we talked about this when we talked about the For All Mankind the Moon show thing that I watched. Like this idea of like a test pilot and like the idea of like. In order for humans to achieve anything, there has to be sacrifice. Apollo 1, 3 astronauts literally died in a cabin fire inside their module, right? And it's like that was part of the process that led to men landing on the moon. And like at the end of the day, like what's kind of cool is like even though there is great sacrifice and pain and suffering that goes along the way, like now we have this system
Which is
where
super,
you can
super
go
safe.
anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And have an incredibly minuscule risk of any sort of incident.
Isn't that crazy?
And it's
that
not
air
even,
travel's
yeah.
like immensely safer than driving your car.
And like it's immensely safer than driving your car. And like I want to be careful with this because it's affordable in the sense that like the majority of the world can afford to do
Your
it.
bang
But
for your buck is incredible.
your bang for your buck is incredible. That's my
Yeah.
point. Like if you can scrounge together like $500, you can get from here to New York. You know what
Which
I mean?
is crazy.
And
no,
so,
dude,
like, if you
even
had a
better.
dream-
We
if
were
you had a-
looking
yeah.
at tickets to Maine, and it was like $250, and we're like, "What? That's like so affordable
Yeah.
versus gas." And if you were to drive that,
Yeah.
no.
Exactly. So yeah, I have found that particularly fascinating. How is your table going?
Dude, it's good. Yeah. So Jason's asking about like a new kitchen table that I'm making in the wood shop. Did I tell you about like the little secret feature that it's gonna have?
No.
All right, cool. There's a secret feature that I'm not going to tell Jason about now that I've got you all interested. No, dude, there's a cool little secret feature, and I'm working on the secret feature. Dude, it's so funny that you're talking about like trying to perfect things, right?
Yeah.
And like woodworking is so perfectly imperfect, right? Like you're dealing with a substance. First of all, like this wood is so beautiful. It's red oak, and I think it's just gorgeous. But anyways, you're dealing with a substance that moves over time. And there's woodworking and there's woodworking, right? So like the original builds that I would do, it would be like really cheap wood, pine, and I wouldn't allow for wood movement. So like, for example, like we just sold our old kitchen table that I made for Elena when she was in college. And
It had character.
it had a lot of character, to say the least. And there was areas where like the wood had just blown out, and it just looked really rustic as a result of it, which isn't really our style.
Yeah.
And that was a great learning experience for me. And like there was like a little bit of sacrifice there, right? Like so, like just painstakingly took time on that table, and it still sucked, and then it allows me to learn and make the next one better. So this, long story short, the table's going great. I'm taking my time on it. I'm putting in a bunch of features to allow for wood movement. And what wood movement is essentially, depending on the season and depending on the location, like it will absorb water. Like no matter how much like epoxy or clear coat you put onto wood, it will always still try and absorb water. So,
Well, how do you like? I'm interested from an engineering standpoint how you build in movement.
yeah.
In the
So,
table.
so for example, well, dude, so in this, the perfect example is the secret feature that I'm not going to tell you about. We'll talk about it next week. But for example, like envision like a long table, right? And it's more long than it is wide. Well, and grain should always go with the length of the piece, because that's where you get most of the strength from wood, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
So if you were to break wood, you'd want to break it so the break would go with the grain, then it would go against the grain. Anyways, long story short, if you think of wood as literally just a bunch of dehydrated straws that are all in line with each other, that's the wood grain. And literally, if water gets into those straws swell. Well, that wouldn't make the table really longer. It would end up making it wider.
Yeah.
So for example, if you have two pieces of wood,
So you're
that are
saying
on
wood
either side,
swells perpendicular to the grain.
yes, exactly.
Okay.
In most cases. So if you have a piece of wood next to it, you need to allow for a little bit of space for that wood to swell. That way it just doesn't blow out another piece of wood. Well, in this case, I actually have these metal brackets that allow for that swelling, where they can slide one way but not the other way.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's like super cool. And then there's certain rules too. Like if you're gluing together pieces of wood, and if it's a relatively small area, like let's say you're gluing a piece that's only 2 inches, you don't really have to allow for that swelling nearly as much as if you were to have that multiplied over the course of an entire wood width or table width. So that's kind of what I'm working on. It's going great. I'm super excited to show you though, because
I'm excited to see it.
I think with that added feature, I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
How close are you to finishing?
Well, here's the part that sucks is no matter how hard you try, there's always going to be little things that pop up. So I literally thought I was like a couple days out. I'm probably a week out now with my actual work schedule. The reason being is because when I was gluing it up, you put immense pressure onto the pieces as you're gluing them. And what happened is the whole entire table flexed a little bit and it kind of bowed. So now
Is
I
your
have to
planer
go.
big enough to run the whole thing?
It's not. So now I'm literally hand planing it. So I've got this little hand tool, and I'm literally like hand planing it, and I've been doing it for like an hour or so already, and it's still not even close.
Oh man.
So it depends on how quickly I can fix that.
Oh, dude. Well, I know you. The thing with Luke is like, see, because here's the thing. Like, you know how like people have hobbies. Like, I play guitar. It's a fun hobby. You know, I'm not very good.
Dude, that is so
No.
not true.
No. You think what you think is good is not good. I guarantee you know exactly the sentiment where like you'll see a piece of woodworking and you'll be like, you know what I mean? Okay. Luke's actually insanely good with his woodworking.
That's not true.
And it was so because Carly and I just bought a bunch of furniture because we're redoing our house as I've mentioned on the show before. And like literally, like I've looked at how expensive some of this stuff is online, and I'm like, I wish Luke would just start selling his furniture because like it literally, Luke's better at it than literally anybody that I've seen, and he just does it for himself, and he just makes his own pieces at home, and he has all these incredible pieces of furniture at his house, and I'm just like, it's a waste. You need to be sharing your talents.
Dude, maybe
with the
one
world,
day.
man.
Maybe one day. It's all this like research and development that goes into like making a piece for the first time. Like I could crank this wood table out like in literally a quarter of the time, legitimately a quarter of the time. But like so much of it goes to like the planning stage where I literally just sit on a high chair and just stare at the piece, and I just kind of like craft it as I go. I'm not trying to sound like all like artsy.
No,
and shit.
it's no, but
you know
I think
what I mean?
that's an
But
important phase. That's
like
an
it
important
is,
part
and
of
like,
it.
dude, that's what I love about it, man. It's so cool to create that.
Yeah, like and so actually we're gonna be moving the studio. We're gonna be here for a couple more months, and then we're gonna be out of here because we're using a different room for it.
Yeah.
And Luke's gonna be doing a bunch of woodworking for that as well. I'm excited.
Dude, I'm
to see
stoked
it.
to do that.
Everybody can judge him.
Yeah,
on his
dude, we
quality
should
of work.
when the table's done, we'll put up a little picture during one of the videos.
Yes,
and
I think that's
we'll show it
I think
off.
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
But that's all we have for today. As always, I appreciate you guys, and we will see you next time.
Thanks a lot.